Let's go!
So, in summary, EVO, as we predicted a few months ago, was canceled. It was one of the last big events that we were hoping might actually make it, considering that E3 got canceled. It was sort of like, oh, because of this crazy, outbreak pandemic, is there going to be our biggest fighting game tournament of the year? Is that going to be safe because it is further away? And long story short, no, it wasn't. EVO has now joined the ranks of Comic-Con, of GDC, of E3, of everything else, and it's not surprising, to say the least. The most interesting thing about this is that this EVO was going to be pretty exciting, like the Invitational Marvel vs. Capcom 2 tournament. The few games that were there did seem like they were going to be pretty fun, but there was some observations that I had sort of jokingly made back when it was announced, that all the games that are big frontrunner games at EVO either don't have rollback netcode or do have rollback netcode and it's implemented very poorly. All the games at EVO have had notorious online issues. Issues with connectivity and distance. So if you want to play people in an international setting, which is the whole point of EVO, it's not a regional, it's not a local, it's not even a statewide, right? Which is usually what regionals kind of are for fighting game tournaments. The whole point of EVO, it's worldwide. And the toughest part when you get into issues of worldwide connections with the majority of these games that have delay-based netcode, the worse it's gonna get. Way worse. You get some dude that's the greatest player in Europe and he has to play against some guy in SoCal, in Grand Blue, or Tekken, or Dragon. Like, I need to bring up an example image. Hold on a second. Here's the thing. These were the games, and are the games, of EVO 2020, right? Cool. Very cool. All these games have terrible online. Like, Street Fighter V is actually comparable as having the best netcode of all these games. Haven't played a lot of it, but I haven't heard great things. Holy fucking shit. Holy fucking shit. Only runs good at 5 bars. Was being played on Dreamcast. Can run well. Capcom trying to do something about it, not doing a very good job. Holy shit. Bruh, it was good at the start, but now that it's starting to even out, it's pretty painfully obvious that, yeah, this is just the same netcode and slightly improved Tekken 7 netcode. I made this as a joke. EVO this year is running on all games that have bad online so that you have to go to EVO. You don't have the luxury of consistently getting a variety of communities and matchups based on different people all over the screen, the world. You don't have the luxury of being able to just jump into a lobby and inviting friends from any portion of the United States and hoping that that situation is going to be great. No, you have to make sure you're playing somebody right next to you. There has to be coordination. And if you're running an event that is revolving around a world stage, an actual world tournament, no game on here, no single game is accompanying that. None of these games' online structures, their lobby systems, anything like that is technically good for it. It's crazy. It's actually crazy, and it was one of my crazy, making a joke predictions. That's why we have EVO with all these games, because you can't play them online super well with your big communities. You have to go to Vegas to find all the best competition, because you're not just going to be able to invite some guy from Europe that's good. There are ways to mitigate this, right? There is programs like Parsec, which can do a decent job, but from what I understand, Parsec doesn't exactly run on rollback. It's essentially like a much more distributable ability to relay inputs from player to player. Pretty sure Parsec still relies on essentially delay-based netcode, and it's not technically rolling back. However, Parsec as a program is a hell of a lot better than the delay-based netcodes of any of these games, like outside of Street Fighter V, which you can get good matches in SF5, but the problem is finding the good matches with no delay is very tough, is super tough. Yeah, Parsec's gonna run a little bit better, but then you have to limit yourself to running on Parsec. You have to limit yourself to having the PC versions of these games, right? There becomes a logistical issue of actually running tournaments if you're going to be trying to circumvent the terrible online of all of these games and then no online of this one. It's kind of bizarre, the situation that we're in right now. Where EVO is going to attempt to do online tournaments. Like, that is their plan this year. They don't want to cancel EVO completely. They want to actually have the event still, and have it be a viewership experience, but with online matches. I don't know how they're going to do it because of the nature of all these games. Like, a lot of people were telling me Marvel 2 is essentially canceled, and I kind of agree. Marvel 2 is sort of donezo. And the reason Marvel 2 is donezo is because they were going to be running off the Dreamcast version of the game. Now, you might be saying, why don't they just play Marvel 2 online? The online's actually decent. Yeah, the online is decent in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on PS3 and 360. However, the lobby system is super jacked. It's some ancient, archaic 2009 bullshit, and it is barely functional. If you want to actually spectate matches and have it not like either kick you out or freeze the system or, you know, just start up without you pressing anything, it's a problem. And issue number 2, even though Marvel 2 has Generation 1 console rollback, which is still better than almost all the games on this list, it's unpurchasable. You can't buy it. You can't even own it if you wanted to. The only way you could actually acquire Marvel vs. Capcom 2 legally is to get a physical box copy that had a download code. And that download code, or that physical box copy, was essentially going for $200 to $300 if you could find them about a year and a half ago when I was last checking, because I wanted one, right? I was like, hey, I want one of these just for collector's sake. I want all the versions of Marvel 2. I never even got one. The biggest issue here, you can't even get the game into the people's hands. Like, you remember when you have to have a PS3, you have to have an Xbox 360, you have to have online setup if they're doing it on 360. The 360 version runs much better than the PS3 version online. And number 2, you can't even buy it. And number 3, if we wanted to get these people to do it, what are we gonna do? We have to send them systems that already have it installed? I think that's like the only way. I think like the EVO coordinators would have to literally ship the finalists that they had for Marvel vs. Capcom 2 consoles with hardware and everything already, with software already installed, and get them to sort of run it and then try to make the lobby. All this shit falls apart, right? All of this stuff immediately falls apart when you actually start thinking about it. The other big problem is that even if you find, a physical copy of Marvel 2's box, the codes are expired now. Apparently, they were only for 10 years. And that was 2009 when it came out. 2019 was last year. Even if you had a physical copy of Marvel 2, which are super rare and super limited, it wouldn't even work anymore. The only way is to technically game share it, which isn't technically legal. But still, you got to get some guy that has it. You can only game share it so many times, yada, 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 have a hack system. It all begins to fall apart. I personally hope, I really hope that these games that you're seeing right here aren't cemented in stone. I'm hoping that there wasn't a big plan for all the aforementioned titles as being main showcase games. To be completely frank, the only game on here that you potentially could run a successful and functioning online tournament with distance and you hope it works is this game right here, Street Fighter V. Now the problem is Street Fighter V even good with its online and distance issues? It's not. It's either going to run for some people, or some people the connection's going to be freaking weird. Unless you're all running the PC version of the game with the fan-made netcode hack, and everyone else is running the fan-made netcode hack. There's a handful of games that can sort of take the online environment and make this work, right? And like I said, none of the games there were actually the ones that we need them to be. There's already a pretty big compilation of games that a lot of people have mentioned could work. The number one game that is relevant and quote-unquote popular and is relatively good, well-functioning and can run online tournaments is Mortal Kombat 11. Regardless of what you feel about Mortal Kombat 11 and MK11 not being a main stage game at EVO this year, this is a wonderful opportunity for MK11 to suddenly be a game to sort of frontline EVO, because MK11 has functioning rollback, and you can't control everyone's you can't control everyone's Wi-Fi connection, but at least you can do something, right? At least there is a possibility with MK11. And MK11's a game that's going to get a lot of entrants. It's going to be a game that will be obviously a big game, right? It'll be a big showcase title. But the issue, I don't think, relies in them just choosing Mortal Kombat 11 for the sake of popularity. I think the issue of MK11 is the fact that there might be something with Warner Brothers' involvement. I think there's something potentially where WB maybe didn't want EVO showcasing the game and wanted to do their own thing. So that was actually my early prediction for MK11. So I don't know if that's going to be the case, but either way, a very obvious game that could fit very well into EVO 2020 now that it's going to be online. is MK11. Other games that I could run off the top of my head might not have the biggest audiences possible, but they do definitely have much better online play with rollback netcode, as well as functioning lobby systems that make it easy to spectate matches for the sake of an online tournament. The obvious one is Killer Instinct, and I don't think I need to say anything regarding KI and how KI works and functions, and while its lobbies aren't the greatest in the world, they do completely work and everything is completely functional. And KI is a game that's had a resurgence over the pandemic because a lot of people have been searching for a fighting game that has good online without getting frustrated while they're at home for every hour of the day. And a lot of players have taken up Killer Instinct, and it's gone pretty well. There's a lot more players of KI on Twitch in general. There's a lot more people streaming the game. There seems to be, every time I watch somebody streaming Killer Instinct, they go into ranked matches and they find a match within like potentially 10 to 15 seconds. It's kind of nuts. There seems to be more KI players now than there ever have been over the past few years. That's been super refreshing because KI has always been a great game. It's just always been on a platform that not everybody loves. So there's been some issues. The other game that has been having a somewhat of a resurgence because the developers are paying attention is Skullgirls. Mike Z has even been making some articles. I believe he's been mentioning the stuff that he's been changing to Skullgirls in terms of its online net play. So the PC version of Skullgirls has actually been getting a couple of net play patches to improve its rollback netcode. From what I understand of watching people playing the game on Twitch every once in a while, there's not a ton of them, but the people that do play it, it's running pretty damn good. And Skullgirls is one of those niche fighting games that has a hardcore community, and it's got a lot of people that are super excited. Also, SNK has been putting in some pretty big efforts with its classic games and incorporating the works of Code Mystics. Thank you. Code Mystics has been working with the SNK devs to retroactively fit in rollback netcode into a couple of their fighting games, notably Last Blade 2 and Gauro Mark of the Wolves. And while I don't know much of Last Blade, I've played very little of the game, much less do I understand it. Gauro is a game that's pretty easy to pick up and sort of start playing, and I could not believe how good the net play was on Gauro. It was shockingly good, to the point of which it made me enjoy Gauro more than I ever have, instead of me consistently referring to Gauro as sort of like the other Third Strike. I finally got to experience the game and fight a variety of skill sets and people from across the world with that game functioning online the way it does, and learning it. Like, actually learning the mechanics of the game and applying them at the right moments and everything, and when it all melded together, it was awesome. I was having so much damn fun. That could be the SNK game replacement, right? Because Samurai Showdown obviously has big problems. So yeah, there's like a few games in here that I think could actually work. The other one that could be the Marvel game is pretty clear and pretty obvious, and it's not Marvel. Shockingly, it's not even Marvel 2, because I don't know how they would do that. It is Power Rangers Battle for the Grid. And Power Rangers got a pretty huge lobby update the last time we played it. For some, it was working pretty good, and for others, it was okay, but it was day one of the lobby working up, and there were some kinks to be figured out. But when we got everyone in there, and it was actually running, it was great. Like, no joke, it was emulating what Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite's lobby system does, which is arguably the best lobby system Capcom has ever made in any of its games, including the ones made by other developers. And they do a similar thing, but it's more functional. I think that's actually gotten better and more updated over the past few months. Power Rangers is a crazy game. Like, it's an absolutely crazy game. It emulates a lot of what Marvel vs. Capcom 3 does, and you get touched, you die, and that applies to both sides. So it's a dirty, disgusting, raunchy fighting game, and I fucking love it. And every single time I've played it, it's got interesting characters and crazy stuff they can do. And every time I've had to go online, I'm surprised that almost every single match I play runs pretty good. I have this interesting barometer when it comes to online fighting games where if a game's netcode has issues, watching me play it is really going to exemplify those issues. Because if I run into a lobby where I'm matchmaking and the game doesn't give me options to only connect with people that are close to me, right? To only get matched up with people that have the highest quality connection, I'm gonna get thrown into like a lobby, and suddenly it's not just gonna be people that are in Southern California looking for matches. It's gonna be people from everywhere. So these people everywhere suddenly try to find me, and suddenly the online structure and validity of its netcode is sort of put into challenge because you're not playing the game under the standards it wants you to play under. You're playing under everyone's standards. They're like, oh, I just want to play with you. I'm from Guatemala. I'm from Brazil. I'm from Guam. Like, it doesn't matter. And I don't know where they're from. I just get matched with them, and then we play, and it's fucking terrible. It's incredibly bad. So much so that for the majority of these delay-based games, when I do jump online, I'd say like a quarter of my matches actually aren't really delayed. Thing is, when it comes to games like Killer Instinct, with my experience, I haven't played a lot of Skullgirls, but I can probably say the same for Skullgirls because it has good rollback. But for Killer Instinct and Power Rangers, the 3 games that I've already mentioned, and even Galro, when I played those games online and people were looking for matches with me, I very infrequently ran into rough matches. It was like maybe 1 out of every 5 games actually was super stuttery and weird because you can't fix every online problem with rollback-based netcode. But like I said, the majority of those games were good. That's like a situation where suddenly, you know, the online structure of a game and its infrastructure to set you up with people is put into challenge, but most of the time it's going to be pretty damn good. For other people, it's going to be different. Like I'm like a unique example where I get 10,000 people watching, and 8,000 of them are trying to fight against me or some shit. Still looking forward to seeing games played online. Very much looking forward to a lot more games that potentially could be there that have better online, because the quality of the play won't be completely compromised, and that's a big thing.